This is Kimberly Quinn, host of the Mindcraft podcast, and I can't tell you how much fun I have had doing this podcast. I started when the world closed over the pandemic in an attempt to spread some positivity out there and give people some strategies to enhance their own well-being and reduce anxiety and all of that. Now, 2 years later, we're still going strong and now listened to by 52 countries across the world. And I've even helped some of my students get going with their own podcasts. It's super easy to do. And I'll tell you, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. I'll just explain for you. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It is a ball. Start today. Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft episode. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am just ecstatic to be here on this beautiful fall day. It's just gotten brisk and it's gorgeous. And the topic today that I really like to discuss is about just lighten up. So basically what we're talking about is recovering from this, perpetual state of overseriousness. Just throw that in quotes, overseriousness. We just don't need to be so freaking intense all the time because life is not an emergency. It's rarely an emergency. Are there moments that you get that life-changing phone call? Yes, but thankfully they are the minority. In fact, life isn't even an urgency most of the time. Yet we make it that, don't we? And it just doesn't have to be. It just doesn't have to be. So we're going to talk about lightening up. And my inspiration from today is Richard Carlson. He's written, I don't know how many there are. There are quite a few books in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series. So if you hear me say that, it doesn't mean it's the same one all the time. He's got a lot of them. These are little books that have like a page and a half of just, tips and strategies for life. And so anyway, that's where I'm coming from today, is just lightening up. And I took a stroll out with little Giovanni out in the woods this morning, and it's just breathtaking. It's just the leaves are starting to turn. They're very late. Well, I guess they're not late. The trees know what they're doing, right? So they might feel late to us, but they're starting to turn. And also autumn, fall. It's just the change in leaves is so metaphorical. I think, obviously the change in leaves, change in season is so metaphorical for life because, as they say, the only constant in life is change, right? And so people getting resistant to change can cause us to get all to clamp up and get intense and dig our nails in and all that, when really all we need to do is accept that this moment is what it is, the day is unfolding as it's unfolding, and just lighten up. So Richard Carlson says, the root of being uptight is our willingness to accept life. Let's start over. The root of being uptight is our unwillingness to accept life as being different in any way from our expectations. Very simply, we want things to be a certain way, but they're not a certain way. Life is simply as it is. Oh, amen. Perhaps Benjamin Franklin said it best. Our limited perspective, our hopes, our feats become our measure of life. And when circumstances don't fit our ideas, they become our difficulties. Well said, Ben, huh? And this brings me back to, I think it's John Kabat-Zinn who said this, but if it's not, he's an upholder of what I'm about to say anyway, that the definition of stress, I'm pretty sure it's him, the definition of stress, according to John Kabat-Zinn, is wanting this moment, this present moment that we are in right now, to be somewhat different than what it is. Think about that. Even when it's these, unpleasantries. It doesn't even have to be a big scale, right? Unpleasantries. We wake up and get our run in our stocking, break a nail, stub our toe, and then amp it up to the tire blows on the way to work. We're safe, but it's a drag. It went flat. We're on the side of the road. Cell phone's dead. Da 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 da. wanting the present moment to be something other than it is what I think largely, it's like the springboard. It escalates us into this sense of urgency, which is just so unnecessary, and this over seriousness and now I'm going to miss this, I'm going to miss that, and oh my god, and she's going to say this, and we get all crazy with emails even. How am I going to respond to all these people? Well, here's the thing, you can't. So set a timer on it. Little pomodoros are good for that, named after the tomato, right? Answer what you can answer. Set yourself a curfew for whatever time of day you're going to stop doing that. And and what got done, and what didn't. And that's it, kind of the end. And then Richard continues to say, he says, we spend our lives wanting things, people, and events to be just as we want them to be. And when they're not, we fight and we suffer. Kind of like what I was just saying. And we just sort of naturally just dig our claws in and resist change, or sometimes it's actual all and out change happening, or it's just things not living up to what we expect them to be. And think about that. There's the easy fix is not to have the expectations in the first place. Doesn't fix everything, but certainly this is one. I have to say, there are some positives to growing up in an addicted household, and one of them is not having expectations. When you're an ACOA, adult child of alcoholics, you learn early on that if you want to get it done, you got to get it done yourself. So, though that can have some struggles with it too, it honestly, I think a lot of it's positive. I really, really do, because uh, I've grown up with this half full perspective on things. When you don't expect things from people or situations, you're not disappointed. It's just kind of, that's how it is. And there's even though there's obviously a lot of suffering growing up with dysfunction in this particular context, as far as what we're talking about, there can be a shift into a half full perspective viewpoint of a way of life, because we can really avoid disappointment by not setting the bar there. Now obviously there's a spectrum with this, because certainly for a child to expect a parent to take care of their basic needs is far different. That's an obvious one. Is far different than when, as adults, we expect these individual situations to, for Thanksgiving to turn out exactly as we wanted. That's all. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people really struggle around the holidays, and that's the expectations thing. In my opinion, is most of the source of the pain. To be truthful, all these airbrushed photos and all these TV ads and pop-ups on the computer with these, ideal family, which we all know doesn't exist. Whatever there's a staff behind, a team of people, media people putting all that together, making the food look, gorgeous, like it popped off a painting. I mean, that's largely, and that feeds into our unconscious and conscious minds. And then it's like, what's the matter with me that I couldn't put together the perfect, a word I don't like or use in my language usually, because it doesn't exist. What's wrong with me that isn't, what's wrong with me that I don't have a partner? What's wrong with me that I don't have a family? What's wrong with me that I can't get along with my siblings, even though they might be completely toxic? What's wrong with me? Da 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 da. And the disappointment if the turkey's a little dry, like, who cares, right? None of it is an urgency. None of it is an urgency. Even if, God forbid, you had to, call out for pizza, is that a drag? Maybe a little bit. But if you look at it and try to tell that story, not to be that person, but try to tell that story to, to somebody who's completely food insecure, or in the, developing country, who would gladly have the pizza. It's just, we can just really let 98% of all this expecting go. So Richard then says, the first step in recovering from overseriousness is to admit that you have a problem. You have to want to change, to become more easygoing. You have to see that your own uptightness is largely of your own creation. Amen. Oh my God, of course it is. It's composed of the way you've set up your life and the way you react to it. There's so much wisdom in here. There's so much wisdom just in that tiny few sentences right here, right now. I mean, right out of the gate, I love how he talks about, admitting you have a problem. It sounds very 12-step program, right? And it's so true, because when we're walking around in this, sort of delusional state, that this is all working for us, or maybe it is working for us, but in an unhealthy way, right? Maybe there's payoff in it because we're getting attention from our toxic partner or something like that, but it's not working in a healthy way. So admitting that there is a problem, right? So over seriousness is a problem. Why? Because it steals or corrupt, maybe steals or corrodes or corrupts our valuable life minutes. And that means it's a problem because we only have so many. I mean, it's just the truth. We only have so many. And at a fabulous 57, I, of course, realize I've got fewer in front of me than behind me, unless I'm going to live to be 115 years old, right? So, yeah. And then, the very next sentence, he talks about your own uptightness being, largely of your own creation. Of course it is. Remember, thoughts come first and feelings come second. So Richard is a Minecrafter, just like we are, because this is how it works. We can't feel it if we don't think it first. That's just how it is. And if we look at it as a cumulative pattern of thought, then it's no big surprise if this is your, 55th Thanksgiving, that things are still going the way they're going if we haven't made any changes, or we're still disappointed in Aunt Tessie, who keeps bringing that bean casserole that nobody can stand, and then she spits when she talks to everybody. So rather than maybe maybe strategically placing Aunt Tessie at a part of the table, maybe that's on the end and out of spinning range, we continue to get disappointed that, stuff landed on us. That's just like one ridiculous example. But it's like, if we continue to expect things to be different, we're going to continue to be disappointed. In fact, I think Ben Franklin also has a saying about that, right? That insanity is continuing to do the same thing and expecting something to be different, like with the results. I mean, of course, it's just how it goes. So basically, Richard's right on board with what we're saying, right? Which is, we are the captain of our own ships. We have created our life in this day. Me at 57 right now. My life is accumulation of choices I've made, good, bad, or indifferent, all the way up until this point, right? And then we are also sort of composed of how we've reacted to things in general over the years. Like it's just how it is. It's cumulative. It's cumulative. Just like if somebody does anything else, well, let's say a positive example, running. Okay, so if you're a runner, even if you miss a day because it's raining, whatever, it's cumulative. So this way, even if you took off some time when maybe if you were pregnant and having kids, or maybe, whatever, if you're still running in between that and most of the time and 4 days a week, and then you get back to it after you have the baby, you're going to be a healthier 80-year-old than somebody who didn't run. I mean, it's just how it goes. Well, mentally, that isn't different. If you've been doing your mental exercises, your mental calisthenics, which includes filtering through life, filtering everything you can possibly let go of to free up this valuable space in your mind for all things pleasant, you're going to be a much healthier 80-year-old if you've been doing that all the way along. It's just the truth. Okay, then he says the next thing. The next step is to understand the link between your expectations and your frustration level, kind of like what we were just saying. Whenever you expect something to be a certain way and it isn't, you're upset and you suffer. On the other hand, when you let go of your expectations, when you accept life as it is, you're free. To hold on is to be serious and uptight. To let go is to lighten up. This is fantastic, because I'm also thinking about, we've talked about what's a Buddhist thing, but Wayne Dyer talks about it a lot. This whole idea of being of outcome-based happiness. When we attachment is, again, Buddhist thing. Attachment, according to the Buddhists, leads to suffering. So Wayne Dyer says constantly, keep your mind open to everything and attached to nothing. When we get attached to Thanksgiving being a certain way, we get attached to so-and-so has to sit next to me or not next to me, if that's the case. Attached. We just suffer instead of just letting it go. This attachment brings overseriousness and uptightness. And then Richard also says at the end, and he's absolutely right, He says, and when you lighten up, life is a whole lot more fun. Awesome. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful northern Vermont. Have a mindful, light day.